Aren't you tired of wargaming on a flat ping pong table? Using blue felt for streams and rivers? Blocks of foam or books to represent hills? Fuzz for trees and woods? Masking tape for roads? You don't have to settle for that anymore. Now there's a better system. Wouldn't you like an easy, inexpensive gaming surface that accurately reproduces real landforms, either of your own design or off of actual maps? One that can be set up quickly and stored easily after your game. And best of all, one that works with virtually every major miniatures and tactical board game rule set without major revisions. Well, here it is at last, the Terrain Maker system. It can do all these things and many more, some of which we will show you in this program. You'll learn the basic features of Terrain Maker, how the hex system is developed, and how you, using simple methods, create your own realistic scenery. You'll even learn how to reproduce a particular historical battlefield. So get ready to explore GHQ's Terrain Maker, the newest, most revolutionary development in gaming since the hex itself. This beautiful battlefield is made up of individual hexes. It's here on a dining room table, which measures about 3 feet wide and about 5 feet long. Now, each of these individual hexes are 4 inches across. You can use various gaming scales, but since the normal gaming scale is 1 inch equals 50 meters, a 4-inch wide hex is 200 meters across. This means that there are 5 hexes to the kilometer. This table is 2 kilometers wide and about 3.5 kilometers long, a very respectable size for a normal evening game. Now back to the individual hexes. These are very easy to construct. You can certainly do it at home. Each hex is reversible. So this fancy gaming table was manufactured out of many individual hexes. So you get this very artistic appeal when you're finished with the whole project. But each individual hex is very easy to do. All the tools and supplies you need are found around the home or are easily obtained at a hobby shop. You'll use all of these for the various types of Terrain Maker hexes. They are sawdust material, foam, tan paint, white glue, a paintbrush, a straight edge, fine line magic marker, an X-Acto knife, and a pile of Terrain Maker hexes. Flatland, plain, and road hexes are the most common. We'll start here by drawing a straight road hex. Now the instructions that come with each pack of Terrain Maker hexes tell you all the dimensions. So you measure in the correct distance and then take a straight edge and draw lines between the points, as we've done here. Now the first thing you have to do is grab your X-Acto knife, and we will cut the ditch out from beside the road. Almost all roads have ditches. The Terrain Maker system is superior to most others in that you can duplicate the 3-dimensional topographic features that are so important to a battlefield. All of your roads will have these ditches next to them that troops can hide in. So you very carefully use a number 11 blade and cut along the lines about 1/4 of an inch deep and remove those strips for the ditches. Now after you've removed the ditches, it's a good idea to paint the edges of the hexes green at this time. Now since the hex is reversible, here we have a curved road hex, and you'll notice that the ditches line up on each side. That's very important. Now once you've measured and cut one hex, then you don't need to measure all the rest of your road hexes. You just simply place the edges of the hexes next to each other, line up the corners, Take your fine point magic marker and mark where the ditches should be on the uncut hex. Turn it around, do the other side, then take your straight edge and connect the lines. It's as simple as that. Then very carefully pull out your knife and cut those again. Now once you've got your ditches cut, the next step is to get out your tan latex paint and paint the road and the ditches. Take your paintbrush. We recommend an artist brush about 3/4 of an inch across. And you don't have to be real careful, just try not to get any of the paint onto the green edge of the hex. Paint the ditch, come back and paint the surface of the road, and paint the ditch on the other side. At this point, we're going to let that paint dry. So while that's drying, we can paint the rest of the road hexes. Now we have one that's already dried here. The next step will be to put the land and the grass around either side of the road. Take a large plastic bag and put in some highball grass material. This is a dyed green sawdust. You can get it at any hobby shop. We put it in the big bag so it's easier to handle. Now take your tan paint and paint the white edge of the hex next to the road. You don't have to be real careful about it, just try not to get any paint onto the green edge of the hex. Now once you've got the flat surface finished, then come back and daub a little bit of paint into the ditch. That way some of the grass will look like it's growing down into the ditch. Again, you don't have to be real careful, you just want to make sure that you get all of the hex painted this way before it's dried where you painted it first. Daub some in the ditch, and at this point you just sprinkle some of this grass material onto the wet paint. You can see where the road is dry already, the grass doesn't stick there. Tap it on the back to get rid of the excess sawdust, and there's the next step in the treatment. Ditches generally have weeds in them, so we want to add that next. Pick up your white glue and a bag of Woodland Scenic's dark green ground foam. We'll add some white glue to the ditches and then add some of this foam. So daub a little white glue into the ditch. Get some onto the road or onto the grass area, it doesn't matter. And sprinkle the foam into the glue and push it down. You can see how handy this large plastic bag is for this rather than the bag that the foam came in. If you don't get quite enough, come back and pinch a little bit more down into the glue. So there are the three different stages, and notice that the hex is reversible. A plain flat hex is just done with paint and grass. Water hexes are modeled using the same tools, your X-Acto knife and magic marker, but there are a few new things. There's a cup of water and also some blue paint and again your glue. It's also made using 1/4-inch hexes instead of the 1/2-inch hexes. Two of these are piled together to come up with the same thickness as the rest of the ground, and yet the stream is down below the ground level, making it a more important terrain feature on a gaming table. Now what we'll do is cut the top hex and assemble it onto the bottom hex. So we start by placing our marks as shown in the instruction sheet that came with the 1/4-inch hexes, measuring in 10 millimeters on the top and 15 millimeters on the bottom. Now that one's a straight. What I'm holding here is a curved section. So I've made the marks on the edge the proper distance. And the fork would look like that. And take your X-Acto knife, and working very carefully, you want to go in on the line and cut, going just about anywhere you want to, as long as when you get to the far side of the hex, you come out on the line again, keeping the proper angle. You'd be very careful at this point and cut right on the line. We'll do that to the others. You go in at the correct angle, cut through, and exit on the other side. And be careful not to cut yourself. Now the center piece that we're removing, the stream part, will be used in a few moments to make a ridge hex. That piece. So by assembling those two on top of a flat 1/4 inch hex, you'll end up with a stream hex. Now let's cut a curved stream hex. Again, you can cut just about anywhere you want to onto the inside of the hex, so long as you're careful to come out right on the line. Try to keep your streams approximately the same width, except where you're going to do a special hex, such as the one in front of me, which has an island in the center. So here we are back to the edge, and we come out right where the marks were made at 10 and 15 millimeters. Now stream edges don't look the same everywhere along the edge of the stream. So what we have to do occasionally is to take the X-Acto knife and trim a little bit more off of the center part of the edge. Leave the 10 and 15 millimeter dimensions the same, where the two hexes will abut one another. But trim the rest of it so that there's some variety between the different hexes. It'll take a little practice to get to be pretty good at this, but not very many hexes. And you get 48 in one package of 1/4 inch Terrain Maker hexes. So after you've done several, you'll be very good at it. A sharp blade is very important, as you can see here. Once they're trimmed properly, put them together, make sure everything is going to look proper, and get out your white glue. We use the white glue to attach the 1/4 inch hex on the top down to the base 1/4 inch hex. So just run a line of it around the outside edge, set it on the hex, and wiggle it back and forth to make sure that the glue is spread out in a nice even layer. You don't want any excess glue coming out on the inside. Wipe that off with your finger. And we'll glue down the other side. Make sure you line the corners of the hexes up properly. Once you've got them assembled, the next step is to add the water. So we take some dark blue paint, again, latex paint, and a little bit of water so it's a little runny, and paint the center of the stream, just the bottom of the stream bed. And more water out toward the edges, so that it looks deeper in the center and a little bit more shallow as you get closer to the bank of the stream. Paint the edge of the hex where the water is, blue. Set this aside to dry. Once the paint is dried, finish the rest of the hex as you would a flatland hex. Paint the edges green, paint the rest of it tan, add the grass. Now for a river hex, there's only one shore instead of two. Otherwise it's the same as a stream hex. Here are several examples. Two of these can be set abutting each other to make a wider river, such as this. The same technique is used to make a beach. Hill sections are made of 1 or 1.5 inch hexes and half-inch hexes combined. Now for these we'll need 3, in this case 1-inch hexes, 6 half-inch hexes, this will make 6 finished hill hexes, a magic marker, some white glue, and a coping saw. You'll also need the other materials we used earlier to finish the hex off. Now there are 3 different patterns of hills. We'll use the magic marker to show you all 3 of them. The first has 1 point up. All of the slopes are drawn from the corner of the hex to the other corner on the edge. See the way these lines are drawn? There's 1 point right there that's up. Now the second pattern leaves one side up. So we draw a slope on the one side, skip one side, and then down the next. And there'll be one flat edge at the top. That's pretty visible there. Now the other one is an equal-sided, or 2 sides up, so we draw there and on the exact opposite edge of the hex. This will leave us with 2 sides at the top of the hill. So there are 3 different patterns: a 1 point, a 1 side, and a 2 side. When you're using the coping saw, you'll cut on these black lines. That's where the saw wants to exit the edge of the hex. So we'll draw the rest of the lines in. So the single point has 4 sides on its bottom. The one side will have 3 sides. Like that. And the equal hex has 2 on each flat surface. The next step is to cut. You do not want to cut into the small edges. You mostly want to cut on the large flat surfaces like this. Place the coping saw on that first edge cut, and looking back and forth at the 2 different sides, cut through the hex. This looks tricky, but it's really very simple. A little practice will make perfect. If you hurt a hex, don't worry about it. A little white glue can glue it all back together again. Also, Durham water putty, which we'll use in a moment, can be used to fix any errors. So just cut away, and when you get to the far side, make sure you come out exactly on that line which connects the opposite corners. Brush off the excess. In a moment, we'll glue these to these half-inch hexes. See the way the slopes match up, and so do the tops of the hill, the crests. And these can be placed with others to make hill areas. Many different patterns are possible. At this stage, take your white glue and put a good amount on the bottom of one of the hill slopes and glue it to a half-inch hex. Spread the glue evenly and align the corners of the 2 hexes. Finish these hexes as you would any other hex. Paint the edges green, then cover with the standard technique. Now you can lay backfill hexes under the rear so that it comes off to be flat, as I've done here, or you can remove a 1/2 inch hex from that sandwich. So we have a 1 inch hex underneath, and continue your slope farther up the hill. Again, finish these as you would a regular hex. Some turf and some bushes made out of ground foam and the trees. Durham water putty is a great thing to use to smooth the edges if you nicked them a little too much. The top of the hill as well. Just mix them with water and apply it with your finger. Trees add life to all of your Terrain Maker hexes, whether they're normal terrain or South Pacific such as this one. So here's what we need. We start with the materials that come in a package of Terrain Maker, also in their own tree packs. We also have hacksaw blade, matches, a candle, scissors, an X-Acto knife, some side cutters, a pair of tweezers, some diluted white glue, diluted tan paint, and 2 bottles of water-soluble paint, 1 tan and 1 dark brown. The first tree we're going to make is a pine tree. Start by taking your side cutters and cutting the material into different lengths. We don't want all the trees to be the exact same height. Just snip it off and set the trees aside, ready for the next step. The next 2 things we need are the diluted white glue and the scissors. What we'll do with the scissors is to bring the tip of the tree up to more of a point so that they're nice and pointy. This just takes a little snipping. Trim a little off. You can also trim the edges of the tree a little bit so that they're not quite so regular, look a little more natural. Once you've trimmed the trees, the next step is to peel a little bit of the material out of the base of the tree. This will be the trunk. It's easy, just pull on it a little with your fingers. Remove that excess material. You can see we're making 4 trees very quickly here. Just tug at it. It pulls right out of there. Now once this is finished, we're ready to make the tree a little bit more lifelike. Dip the tree into the diluted white glue. And take your tweezers to remove the excess glue solution. What this step does is to make the material look more lifelike. Individual branches will begin to come out of the tree as you wiggle them up and down, squeezing the material and fluffing the tree using the tweezers. Quite a lifelike conifer tree. By the way, the glue solution is about 50% glue and 50% water. If you get too much of the solution on the tree, then just squeeze a little bit more out of it. Once the tree is finished, plant it to allow the glue to dry. Next, we'll make broadleaf trees. Start by cutting the tree material as you did for the pine trees. Some small, some rather long. Twist these around a pencil or the blade of your X-Acto knife. And then we make a trunk by sticking it into the candle, as I just did. Now for a taller tree, this little one in my hand is an orchard-sized tree. But for a taller tree, we take a long piece, double the size of a regular pine tree, twist it around the blade of the X-Acto knife here. Again, be careful not to cut yourself. And then bend the trunk out perpendicular. Just crimp it like that. Now these can be made into several different shaped trees. Here's a short one. You can pull on the tree material a little to make a slightly taller tree, or you can pull on it a lot to make an even taller tree. Once you're happy with the shape, melt the trunk in the candle, blow it out. From there, it's rather simple to finish the tree off and get a very realistic look. We take the white glue and daub it all over the fur on the tree material. Once you've got a pretty good coating on, irregular, then you rub it in the ground foam material, similar to what you use for bushes. This makes quite a realistic looking tree. Again, plant these so that they won't dry on their sides. Here are 3 completed broadleaf trees. Lombardy poplar trees are very easy to make. Cut the material just as you did for your pine trees, only burn the skinny end of the tree with the candle to make the trunk. These trees are most commonly found lining roads in northern Europe. If there's a little too much wind with your candle, shield it with your hand. Now twist the tree in your fingers to make the material stand straight up from the trunk. Just spin it around with your fingers. You can see how quickly these trees can be made. Line your roads with Lombardy poplars. Desert and tropical scenes need palm trees to bring them to life. We start by taking the hacksaw blade and inserting a piece of the tree material most of the way. What we're going to do now is to melt the fuzzy material of the tree using the hacksaw blade to shield the top. You'll notice that I've melted a lot of this material, which I immediately push up on the palm tree using a pair of tweezers. This will represent the palm fronds and the coconuts on each tree. Again, insert a piece of the tree material into the hacksaw blade. This will shield the top. Get it where you want it, and melt the material using the candle. While that's still molten, grab your tweezers and push the material up under the top of the palm tree. The next step is to bring some of the palm fronds up at the top of the tree. Put just a drop of ACC glue at the top of the tree and squeeze with your tweezers. Spin the tree a little bit. We want to get some of this material to stand just about straight up. The next step is to take some of our diluted tan paint and roll the tree in it back and forth. Shake off the excess diluted paint, and then using your tweezers shape the fuzzy material into the different palm leaves. Now take some undiluted tan paint and paint the coconuts and dried palm fronds at the bottom, and then your dark brown paint and paint the trunks. This gives a very realistic looking palm tree for your desert or South Pacific scenery. The GHQ Terrain Maker system can be used with most rules available today. This is not only the traditional miniatures rules, which we'll talk about in a moment, but also all of the board games that are designed for a tactical level game. Here we have Squad Leader and some advanced Squad Leader products. Their boards are already set up with hexes, and if that's what you're going to use your Terrain Maker system for, I would make sure that you designed the individual hexes to duplicate the various terrain features in the Squad Leader system. This gives you the opportunity to have the texture and the beauty of miniatures while still using the intricate rules published by the Avalon Hill Game Company. Now, many other rule systems can be used that originated in board games. Here we have a couple of examples such as Musket and Pike or Soldiers. Almost any other set of rules that SPI published would work just as well. As I mentioned before, now we're going to talk a little bit about how to use a map to duplicate a specific battlefield with the Terrain Maker system. Now, the first thing you have to do is pick your game scale. In this case, one hex is going to equal 100 meters. Now, that's a very small scale and is very good for a skirmish game. In this case, what I did is I took a piece of cardboard and cut out a rectangle the same size as the table that I'm going to game on, in the case, this dining room table. What I do then is I look at the map, and if you're playing a campaign, you already know that there are certain units moving in different places, and you probably can have multiple topographic maps. I lay this down in the area. There's going to be a skirmish here at the St. Peter and Paul Church. There's a reconnaissance unit there, and the enemy is going to be coming up this main road. I know that already as the referee. So I lay this template down and slide it around until I get as much field as possible. The green area here is woods, and this is the field around the road and the church. You could also do it this way. That way you'd end up with the cemetery in the picture. But I think this is going to be a more interesting battle since the troops will be out in front of the church. Now I lay down a template that's a clear plastic transparency with the hexes on it, and as I said, one hex equals 100 meters. So this, what I've done is I line the road up so I have straight road hexes going right across the map. Set up the church here. Notice this small stream and fill in woods on the sides, and there's not too much hill on this one. It would be a little higher on the back corner and a little height over here, and that's all there really is to it. Now we're ready to set up the table. Now, if you would prefer a larger gaming scale, a tactical or a grand tactical gaming scale instead of skirmish, then you need a different set of templates. However, the same exact Terrain Maker hexes can be used. In this case, we're going to use a scale of 1 hex equals 400 meters. When you're playing the game, then 1 inch equals 100 meters. In that case, this is the size of my dining room table rather than that smaller template I had earlier. First, we lay down the template in the area where we think the battle is going to be. In fact, it will be here since that's what we're going to set up on the table. Then we take our plastic template, and again you can see the hexes are much larger here, and set them up in such a way that it will be easiest to use the Terrain Maker hexes to duplicate this battlefield. Here I've got a straight road again running right through the center of these hexes here, and this is a nice stream. This will be very easy to duplicate. From there we've got woods, some other contour lines, and certain buildings like a schoolhouse here. So this would be very easy to set up using Terrain Maker. Historical battlefields can be duplicated using the same overlay method. Any historical, science fiction, or fantasy scenario can be created in 3D with the GHQ Terrain Maker system. 5mm miniatures look great on Terrain Maker, as do 10, 15mm, and larger figures. Terrain Maker is a revolutionary method to make easy, fast, inexpensive, and yet exciting terrain for miniatures gaming. It captures the grandeur of model railroading while preserving the precision of board games. With few tools and basic skills, anyone can use Terrain Maker. It duplicates actual terrain for both historic and modern battles, as well as offering an unlimited number of options for do-it-yourself scenarios. It can be used with 5, 10, and 15mm figures while being specifically designed for 1 to 285 scale micro-armor games. The GHQ Terrain Maker brand scenery system does it all. For complete written instructions, get the Terrain Maker Manual. It and other GHQ products can be found at your local hobby shop. If they don't have it, write to GHQ, 2634 Bryant Avenue South, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55408. Or call us directly at area code 612-374-2693.